Bryce, Eddy here. Most of you know I'm an aggressive high-energy guy, a 4th-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and between bodybuilding and my high-intensity lifting sessions, I still train like I'm 25. You don't need to be a maniac like me to have painful, stiff joints, but if you do, Joint Complex by Nation Health MD can help. I'm a big believer in this stuff. It doesn't matter if you're struggling with aches or stiffness in your knees, hips, or back. Joint Complex contains natural ingredients that promote joint comfort and mobility. It features high-quality turmeric and boswellia to support a healthy inflammatory response. It contains natural eggshell membrane, which promotes strong and supple joint cartilage. Every bottle of Joint Complex is manufactured here in America, so you know you're getting the best quality for your money. Right now, you can try Joint Complex risk-free and save 35% on your order. Go to nationhealthmd.com and enter discount code BRYCE at checkout. That's nationhealthmd.com and discount code BRYCE to get 35% off your order of Joint Complex today. All right, welcome to the Bryce Eddy Show. So today my guest is back, AJ Rice. How are you, sir?
Bryce, great to be here, brother. Let's suit up. Who we going for today? Right?
Hey,
Who
listen.
We got?
Well, look, first, for people who are unfamiliar with you, give you a quick bio background and, why you're just the killer that you are.
You want me to give it? I love talking about myself.
Absolutely.
Well,
I'd rather you do it.
I am a publicist. I'm the publicist. I'm at the center of the MAGA cinematic universe. I worked on the Hill. I produced shows for years, most famously the Laura Ingraham radio show. I was, the great lady. I sat next to the great lady for, 5 years. So I learned how to give people haircuts doing that. And worked with Monica Crowley, worked with Glenn Beck, worked with John Solomon. And then that's about 10 years of my media life. And then about a decade or so ago, I started basically working as a publicist. And, we've done a lot of campaigns. We've done a lot of book launches. But when the OG came down the golden escalator, we threw in, unlike a lot of other PR firms here in DC, we threw in with him. And, people thought we were crazy. But he, as you know, systematically put 16, 17, 18 scalps on the wall. Some have jumped off the wall and become friends. Some are still up there. Some get reapplied, like Rand Paul. And then I would say the first big domino was working with Judge Jeanine Pirro, doing her books. Then I got the Donald Trump Jr. books, and I worked with him. And, there really isn't too many people in the MAGA world that have escaped me. And I know this audience can appreciate the fact that I was brought in to help Charlie Kirk on his last book before this one that's about to come out, which was with Winning Team Publishing, which, of course, is owned by Sergio Gore and Don Jr. and also Big Daddy. So, and I worked on all their books. And it's amazing because, if you see the news lately, I even worked on the MTG book. The MTG book published by Winning Team Publishing, which is owned by Donald Trump Jr. I'm assuming it's underwritten by the organization and obviously Sergio Gore. So again, fresh scalps there. Scalps for everyone, right? Little stocking stuffer for MTG this Christmas. God bless her. There's no perfect Congress people. I don't care who they are. Everyone's, no one passes the purity test, and that's a good thing. I think that the second we start applying them to everyone, we have a problem. That's what the left does. But no, I've worked with everyone, and it's an amazing thing. In 2023, at one point, I was working for Trump through various apparatuses, including Winning Team Publishing. I was working for the Vivek campaign directly. They were the only actual campaign paying us, and they were paying us to put surrogates out in the media to trick all of you into believing that Vivek was the second coming. And then, of course, I was working for RFK. I got a phone call from RFK Jr.'s people. So I had worked on the books, like the real Anthony Fauci, the real Grim Reaper, whatever the hell that was called. And then there was some other books I worked on, but then I was working also with their super PAC. So there was a time in 2023 where I was the general manager of the Yankees, Red Sox, and Dodgers all at once. Wasn't talking about it while that was happening. I always talk about it afterwards. But if you were clever enough and were watching what was coming out of here, my day job, publicist PR, you could see, and look, there's a common theme with these guys, and a common theme with Trump's entire cabinet, most of which we've also worked with over the years. And that is these are disruptors, right? These are all disruptors, and that's what we are here.
Yeah, no, you're center of the universe, which is why I like talking with you. You're in the mix with kind of everybody, and you're definitely in the know. Speaking of Vivek, what happened to him? He sort of dropped off the radar.
Well, he's running. Look, he's got to keep it. He's keeping it tight. He's running for governor of Ohio. He's got Trump's endorsement. He probably will be the next governor of Ohio.
Okay.
And then from there, he takes another swing in a couple of years at something else. I don't even think he's 40 years old.
No, so, I think he's an immense political talent, and
sure.
One of the best guys on the stump. But he was everywhere. Then right now he's just off the kind of news cycle.
Well, I think he's probably sitting in diners in Akron. So so you'll see him again. I'm sure you'll see him again. It's kind of, look, as a PR professional, I'll tell you, sometimes the law of diminishing returns can kick in. You don't want people to see you too much. You oversaturate, right? Now, there are some people that have a different sort of school of thought there, that you just flood the zone forever, just flood it, like be an anthill. But, you kind of have to know when to create tension and release tension. People don't like to think of it like this, but, this is all, including what's going on right now on this show, me talking to you, this is all an entertainment medium. Right?
That's right. No, it's true.
So I don't care whether you're on the stage, the Globe Theater in the 16th century performing for Shakespeare, or whether you're Vivek on the stump in Cleveland. It doesn't matter. You have to connect. This is why when we see politicians win that have no juice, that are reanimated corpses, that are walking cadavers, that are plugged into the freaking extension cord on the wall, we don't really believe our lying eyes, which is why just the, and I hate this word, the optics test of the 2020 election was so disjointed for us psychologically.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not here to go down a bunch of rabbit holes, right? But about what happened here and this,
hey, we can do whatever we want in this show.
Well, we'll be here forever. And, whether that will all get fully litigated, from over the next 100 years, I don't know. But that's the thing with guys like Joe Biden, is that, we couldn't believe. Look, it was like somebody in a wheelchair beating Michael Jordan, right? And it's just like, okay, and I'm supposed to believe this, and then this person got more votes than Obama and everyone else in the last, Reagan, and and then all of a sudden Kamala runs and 13,000 votes vanish 4 years later.
No matter how they try to reason through that one for us, it creates a amount of cognitive dissonance that we know that a game was played, no matter what they try to do.
Sure.
No matter what contortions they make to try to say, oh no, people were home and they were just more interested, and all of that is total BS. But
let's go back to what I was just saying. The reality is that this is an entertainment medium. Whether you're a politician, a podcaster, a theater person, doesn't matter what you are, stand-up comic. With the amount of phones that are everywhere, recording everyone all the time, you have to play it that way. Which is why, and look, here's the thing, it's something the Democrats don't get. It's something that even still some of these linguini-spined Republicans don't get, is that they keep fighting Trump as if he's merely some political figure. He's not. He wasn't. He is a cultural figure. He is a counterculture icon, right? So, whether you don't like this policy or that, I mean, you could try to fight him on policy all day long. It's like banging your head against the wall. That is not where his magic comes from. And when he picked his cabinet, and I'm proud to say that Publius PR kind of acted as the Indeed.com for the White House on this one. He wasn't just picking people that were disruptors like him. He wasn't just trying to upgrade from Mike Pence with a fly on his head, with the doors open. Honey, keep that door open. I don't know what I'll do. He was casting a show, a movie. So whether it's Pete, his leading man, full disclosure, one of our clients, I've known Pete for 20 years. Whether it's Tulsi, whether it's Beston, whether it's Bobby Jr., Monica, whoever the hell it is, Marco, he saw Marco and he said to himself, you know what? He's my favorite Hispanic. I love the Cuban people. I can give Marco probably 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 jobs, and because he's Latin, he'll do them all. If he wants to throw, he's answering the door at the White House. He's helping Melania put the Christmas ornaments on the tree. He's putting a coat of wax on the beast. He's mowing the lawn. He's the Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, whatever the hell Trump needs, right? And look, Rubio has reinvented himself here. Bravo, because look, and that's the thing about Trump. He whether it's Bongino and Cash, Bondi, these guys, Christie. I mean, look at what Christie Noem's doing with the camera and the music and the, pissing off. Sabrina Carpenter's mad this day and this one's mad.
Yes, it's a cast of characters.
Exactly right. And what an upgrade. So look, we're all sad we lost the 2020 election. Like we said, we definitely some funny business. But you would have never got this MAGA Avengers team without taking it on the chin from the deep state. So, and that's what the left is having a hard time processing, is that Trump, the 2024 election was the first win by conservatives in the culture war in a long time, in a very long time. And that's because they threw in with the Walking Dead. They threw in with the people screaming about, the white privilege. They threw in with cancel culture. They threw in with the trans mafia and the bearded ladies. They threw in with all of them. And the American people, even the ones that aren't even political, are like, this, you need to be committed with some of this stuff. So, and it helped that, he got Democrats to move towards him, some famous ones. Look, Joe Rogan voted for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
So all those guys, cultural figures, moving. Basically, I don't think Joe Rogan wakes up every day and he's worried about what Brett Kavanaugh's doing, right? He's feeling out the zeitgeist, right? And it's not just him; it's Theo Vaughn and Shane Gillis and Schultz and all the rest of them. Like, what is the spirit of the times? And the spirit of the times, and this is the history of Western civilization, going all the way back to Aristophanes in Athens and the 5th century BC, is that there's always some power, in play, coming to take your fun from you, coming to steal the language from you, to manipulate the language, to shut down the language, to cancel you. So whether it's demonetization or shadow banning or deplatforming, whatever the hell it is, this is not new. The Walking Dead are not new. Political correctness isn't new. The hunt to shut down, non-moral speech isn't new. So, and it just so happened that right now, the chips are all on right-wingers. It wasn't always the case. I mean, in fact, in most of history, it was, Caesar or the Catholic Church trying to shut down, Miguel de Cervantes, like during the Inquisition for writing Don Quixote, or trying to shut down Moliere in France for his plays, or trying to shut down George Carlin for the Seven Dirty Words, whatever the hell it is, the censors, and that shifts. The sacred cow shifts, but everyone in this audience, and over the last 2,000 years, whether it's Lenny Bruce or Richard Pryor or Shane Gillis, we should all be here to slaughter them. So right now it's the left, and the 20th century's, Mao and Stalin shut down people just as much as the Catholic Church did in the Middle Ages, right? So it's no different. But
no, there's not. I got a question. A question for you on that. I know you're familiar with Dr. James Lindsay, and he got excoriated for talking about the woke right. And I agree with him that we are kind of, in danger. And there's some people that are doing this right now of trending in that direction now. And I don't want a left-wing master shutting me down. I don't want a right-wing master shutting me down or shutting people down. I want liberty to, to kind of reign supreme here.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on what you see going on with the people that want to, kind of clamp us down from the right now?
Okay, well, let's get into that a little bit. Explain to me who Lindsay, and I know Lindsay, we've worked with him on a movie. Promoted the movie he was in. Explain to me who he's describing the woke right as.
He's describing the Christian nationalist types, the people who are saying, okay, now that we have power, sure, we're gonna, jam down certain things from, our perspective. And some of it is the guys that are talking on the, we need to have, Christian authoritative rule in place, or we're going to now censor the left, and we're going to shut these people down, and we're going to have essentially that same, Marxist technique we're going to now apply to the left, and we're going to, jam down, our, censorious ways on them. And there's a little bit of that we're seeing going down. And so as a result, James Lindsay for a little while here has been booted off of stages and things, even from a right-wing perspective now.
Interesting. Okay. Well, let's get into that. So I would say in my lifetime, there have been 3 unelected people that reset the board of conservatism, the American right, in its cultural commentary form. None of them are with us anymore. The first one was Rush Limbaugh. The first one was Rush Limbaugh. The third one is Charlie Kirk. The one in the middle, who was a mentor of mine, was Andrew Breitbart.
Yeah.
And Breitbart and I used to talk trash to each other about the Phillies and Dodgers all the time. But he mentored me in a way, and we would get into this a little bit about that you have to be careful that we don't become hall monitors ourselves, that we don't, the politically incorrect right running around, like thumpers trying to blow whistles like hall monitors on every single idea that doesn't pass a purity test, right?
Right.
Because purity tests are big fat failures. Big fat failures. And they certainly don't you don't win anything. I mean, the Inquisition was not wonderful. You had a Reformation and a Counter-Reformation. Well, you had, obviously, Henry VIII creates this Church of England because and look, I got all kinds of jokes about him and cutting his wife's heads off and, because he couldn't get a divorce and he probably didn't have a Y chromosome and all the rest of it. But he invents his own church. All hell breaks loose. And, certain Catholic areas doubled down in the other direction. And look, you have to understand, I mean, the temptation has always been there to do what Lindsay's talking about. And in most of Western civilization, especially post-Christ, it has been religious authorities that did not like any type of language that could be deemed seditious or too funny or, grotesque, or R-rated, whatever the term is. In fact, if you just take a snapshot of Elizabethan England during Elizabeth I, this is the era of Shakespeare. Now, Shakespeare never got in trouble because Shakespeare had something called patronage. He had not only the Queen who loved him, but he also had, financial backers that kind of insulated him. Now, he also didn't take too many risks. And at that time period, there was a person whose job was called the Master of Revels. The master of revels, the master of revelry, the master of who's deciding whether this joke is appropriate or that joke is appropriate, or you're not allowed to attack them, or this person in your freaking play resembles the Duke of Normandy or resembles the Duke of Sussex or the Duke of, Schmuckfaceville or whatever the hell it is, right? So that's like, and then basically this master of revels would take his reports, right? So he's like, okay, what's Ben Jonson doing? Shakespeare's #1 rival. So if Shakespeare was Disney, Ben Jonson was freaking Quentin Tarantino. He was arrested twice for plays. Elizabeth shut down every theater in London because of his play called The Isle of Dogs, which they burned every copy of. We still don't know what the hell was in it.
Oh,
There's
wow.
no record of it. So Lindsay's right. And then you have it. So then they throw him in jail, and he deliberately converts to Catholicism in prison as a double tap FU to the Church of England. Do I think he cared about Catholicism? Probably not. But he did it because he was just a maniac. Whether it's Andrew Dice Clay, Lenny Bruce, Richard Pryor, Sam Kinison, he was a freaking maniac, right? And he wanted to be arrested. George Carlin, right? Norm Macdonald was told, stop with the OJ jokes. And he wouldn't stop.
He was the
So
best.
you have this guy, 16th century, Queen Elizabeth, and this master of revels is writing reports on what everyone's doing, what they're saying. And then they take it to this other thing called the Privy Council, which is this freaking council that the Queen puts together, which is basically the FCC of the time, right? In Spain, they had a different thing. It was the Inquisition, and there was different people there. But in England, so you have a situation where this guy, Ben Jonson, is hated by everyone, including the Protestants. Catholics don't like him because he's too, libertine. Protestants don't like him for various reasons. The Puritans, and this is what we have to worry about here, and this is who Lindsay's talking about, this new Puritanism, where, we're going to have a stiff upper lip and, no more, the Rolling Stones are singing about the devil, right? Elvis is shaking his hips and he's talking to the devil. I mean, it's the same crap over and over again. So yes, now that we're in power, we're here to bite off more than we can chew and overcompensate. I'm sure. Absolutely.
So, I know you and I agree. I think you and I agree on this, but, Charlie Kirk was instrumental in kind of keeping this whole, coalition together. And, that included some of the, wingnuts out there, the Candace Owen types and people that have gone, sort of increasingly mad, after his death. Sure. And mad, I mean insane. But yeah. What's your perspective on some of the fracture that at least seems to be happening? And I don't believe that we're in a civil war, but I do think that Charlie did hold a coalition together, which is suffering some cracks right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Same thing happened when Breitbart died. I mean, Ben Shapiro and Steve Bannon went to war with each other. See, Rush was the last thing we all agreed on. Do I think we all should be agreeing all the time? No, that's not healthy.
Correct.
So, these internecine fights, I think, are healthy. I mean, I just gave you an example of, 1600, 1590, where you have Shakespeare's crew that are in with the Queen and getting whatever the hell they want, and then Johnson's crew, who's got Christopher Marlowe and some of these other, John Donne and these other wild people at the time in his crew. So it's like, classical music versus punk rock happening. So we are going to have some of that right now, especially when a figure like Charlie is gone, because, to quote, I guess, Shakespeare, nature abhors a vacuum.
Yeah.
So it happened when Breitbart. It happened when Breitbart died. It has happened also with Rush on radio.
Weird subject here, but most of us who've lived a little life out there or live with beloved pets accumulate parasites. If you're struggling with gas, bloating, loose stools, or constipation, or if you often feel tired and weak, there's a good chance you might have a parasite. According to the CDC, millions of Americans are infected, but most of us are unaware. That's why folks are loving Paratarget by Nature's Blast. Paratarget contains a unique blend of natural ingredients that help kick those parasites to the curb. People who use it have reported better digestion and improved energy levels. Just one scoop mixed into your favorite room temperature or cold drink every day does the trick. You'll even get delicious recipes for a tropical smoothie and refreshing citrus sunrise mocktail. Try Paratarget for yourself and save 35% on your order today. Go to Nature's Blast store and enter discount code Bryce at checkout. That's Nature's Blast store to get 35% off of Paratarget. Enter Bryce, BRYCE, at checkout.
People don't understand, and let me interject this. I got the privilege of driving Charlie around, in the early days when he was on the phone with Trump on a regular basis and talking to everybody and, giving his advice to people that would blow your mind, how much influence he had and how many phone calls he was making like that on a daily and constant basis in, keeping people in line. I mean, he was massively influential when it came to talking points, to focusing people on doing the right thing and focusing people on how to win. I mean, there was nobody like Charlie in that. I got to kind of be a fly on the wall for a lot of that. And it was really, truly incredible. And that's what, a good influence leader does. And I don't think there was anybody like him. And maybe, Breitbart was, who incidentally, I mean, I was set to have dinner with him 2 weeks before his death. And, that's one of, my life's greatest regrets is I didn't get that opportunity. But Charlie was incredible that way. And it's Andrew, wild to have his voice missing.
Yeah. Andrew was similar. He was trying to keep the temptation at the time, the temptation to believe in 9/11 conspiracies, the temptation to believe in, Obama birth certificate conspiracies. He was trying to keep some of that away from the sort of Republican brand, while simultaneously saying, look, we need to participate in the culture more. We can't just get on our soapbox and be, Puritan sort of thumpers that, are just going to, rain down, do this and don't do that. We have to participate. Right. And we need to engage people culturally because, the American people care more about that, quite frankly, than they do who's running for dog catcher in, Des Moines. And he was a master of that. And he used new media to do that. Charlie just took the next step as a sort of younger millennial. And obviously Rush was a boomer and Breitbart was a Gen Xer. These are very important people in sort of steering the ship. There will not be another Charlie Kirk. Ladies and gentlemen, you can stop looking. There will be something else.
Yeah.
We don't know what that is yet. But as someone that gets similar phone calls, and I get them as a PR person, as a damage control person, as somebody that's a fixer, you know, I'm not shocked. I mean, I get calls, you know, obviously I can't talk about everybody that calls, but, you know, on how to maneuver things in the public, or how to stop the bleeding, or, you know, so I can imagine. I mean, they were calling him like he was, you know, the Archbishop of conservatism. And, you know, he was. And, you know, the funny thing about him is, you know, and this is always the case, this was the case with Andrew too, is that, you know, it's always the nicest one of us that they come for.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm from Philadelphia. I don't go about my business the way Charlie did. I would be putting these people in wood chippers. Okay. You know, and yet there he was, allowing these dummies to speak, sitting there with a t-shirt on, you know, going into the arena. I mean, I joked with him on the phone that he, you know, he should be wearing a suit of, he start going in there wearing a medieval suit of armor, you know. And it's sad because, you know, that's usually what happens, is the best one is usually the one that they come for. I mean, and I'm like, the left actually thought he was like, you know, I mean, I don't know. They must not know about the rest of us, because, I mean, he was basically Captain America. You know, most of us are more like Deadpool and Wolverine and the Incredible Hulk. Okay?
Yeah.
We're, you know, so now we're going to go through it. Everyone has their own style, and maybe that, you know, sort of grace that he always exhibited publicly is the reason that really got under their skin the most, because he was a walking freaking mirror to how dysfunctional and debauched and whacked the American left has become. And they hated him for it. So, you know, they lift up their skirt, and there's 72 genders under there. And, you know, they didn't like him telling them that.
Yeah. No, those are facts. What do you think about the, you know, rise in, you know, some of these nut jobs? And, you know, I don't want to keep calling her specifically out, but there's a whole crowd of people now
Sure.
that are, you know, talking so destructively and, you know, really have been losing their mind on things like Israel.
Sure.
And look, I'm a person that, hey, we can criticize the secular government of Israel, we can criticize Jews, we can, you know, we can say what we need to say on things, but, you know, for them, it's become these, you know, weird obsessions, and you know, it's a you know, out of control thought and idea to think that, you know, behind every scandal, problem, or great evil in the world lurks Jews, and that's literally what they're saying in you know, almost every one of these you know, groups that are out there. And I think it's like it's attracting this true crime fan fiction type audience that is lapping a lot of this stuff up in this vacuum. What are your thoughts on that insanity?
Yeah. Right. Only Jewish murders in the building, right? That's what it's called.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they see phantom Jews everywhere. They're in the attic, they're in their glove box, jumping out at them, they're under the floorboards. You know, if I were asked, and I haven't been, to be the brand manager of what Candace, a little bit of what Tucker's doing, and a bunch of these other characters that, you know, Fuentes seems to have always disliked Jews. So he's just saying the same thing on day 500.
Yeah, that's on brand for him.
I mean, that's right. So, but if you're watching people who didn't obsess over this stuff now moving in that direction, obviously there's people that have theories on whether it's being paid for. To some degree, these people are big enough.
There's some evidence that's pretty good that it is, but
sure. But some of them are big enough and have their own independent wealth from husbands or from, you know, marrying into the Swanson frozen dinner empire, as Tucker did, that they can pretty much sort of sit inside their silo and say and do whatever they want. and the audience can come and go. They can't be really damaged. They can
they have their own kind of reply army. They've got some big accounts that no matter what they say, they retweet, repost. Oh, breaking news. Look at what Candace just said now.
Right. But so let's take Candace as an example. Now, here's somebody that was an Obama girl who was basically, had a viral YouTube moment and was sort of, as somebody that was a leftist, was thrust into the spotlight pretty much by Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
And
he built her.
Right. And was given this enormous opportunity to, be a sort of millennial conservative Black female leader. A lot of goodwill. Speeches from conservative organizations, women's conservative organizations, Jewish, national security organizations like David Horowitz used to run, and so on. Turning Point USA. And she built up this goodwill and all this equity. And it appears, I don't know the TikTok of her life. She found herself a wealthy white husband. And it appears that the main concerns for her to spend all this capital on seems to be the magical hunt for a French woman's penis and seeing the phantom Jews everywhere. They're in the attic. So I found out where Anne Frank is. That seems to be her main two concerns. And now, obviously, Netanyahu killed Charlie Kirk and all the rest of it. But as somebody that manages people's brands, this is a total disaster, brand wise. No government is perfect, including our own.
Correct.
Every government is filled with imperfect people, including our own. There was only ever one perfect person, if you believe in Christianity, and that means you can criticize Netanyahu, you can criticize the government of Israel, you can criticize the government of Japan and Spain and whoever the hell else you want to criticize, right? You absolutely can. No one's saying you can't do that. But when you start weaving in, going back to the Pharaoh, the oldest tropes known to man, made famous by some of the worst human beings to ever be on planet Earth, especially in the 20th century in Germany. It's like I think about, because look, I'm a comedy historian. I think about, Jerry Lewis did a movie where he was telling jokes in a concentration camp. Now this movie, someone just reminded me of this recently. This movie was a disaster for his career. He never recovered from it. So he's in the concentration camp and he's cracking jokes. He's doing slapstick, in Auschwitz. But it's kind of a serious movie. It's not a Hitler parody or something like that. It's, and the movie's pretty much been never shown. And in fact, his children recently, there was one showing of this film recently. Now, look, as somebody that was talking about censorship earlier, I think you should show it. It shouldn't just be on special occasions when the family signs off on it, someone writes a big check, and everyone gathers at the AFI studios in Hollywood and they play, right? But there are certain decisions you make, like Jerry Lewis made there, that you might not come back from. You might get yourself a little rabid fan base, the very fine people, as I talk about in the White Privilege album. The very fine people might love you. They might be on both sides. But, it's to me a shame because I think she could have helped us as conservatives on so many other issues other than just, the phantom penis and the phantom Jews. Well, she would claim that the penis is there and the Jews are there. So I don't know what to do about that. I really don't. I think, someone big is going to have to draw their fire on her, probably, and force a fight. And it has happened over the years. The Reagan and the Bush people fought in the 1980 election. I mean, Goldwater or Buckley fought with the John Birch Society. I mean, there's been these types of fight. I mean, the Trumpers fought with the establishment in 2016. So, I'm not saying it's not healthy, but you are right. I mean, there are some people that have big followings that are going down these rabbit holes. The question is, how many people are actually following them? And then it gets into sort of the philosophical question of what are they trying to do? Is the goal of this to give conservatism or America first or populism and official skin color? Is it? Now, Candace is black. Fuentes, however, is pretty obsessed with race. I mean, is that what we're trying to do here? Does America first have its own religion, a state religion, right? And look, this is some of the stuff you were talking about before with Lindsay, and some of the stuff I was talking about throughout Western civilization. Someone has always tried to create some kind of state religion. I thought right now the state religion was wokeism, but we kind of defeated that a little. We had a little Waterloo moment in 2024, but they're not going to go away. They are ready to elect the bearded lady president of the United States in 2028. They are ready. So, that's the thing, is that the goal here? Does America first have a skin color? Does it have a state religion? And also, if we all are here to defend Western civilization, there is some truth that not all civilizations are created equal. Not all cultures are created equal. And you can come and participate in our great experiment, but that doesn't mean we're throwing the Magna Carta in the toilet, and we're throwing the scientific method in the toilet, and we're throwing, the Declaration of Independence in the Porta-John and so on. But the question is this: is Western civilization Greco-Roman, Judeo-Christian civilization, or, and this is probably what Lindsay's getting at, is it just Christianity only? And is it just Western Europeans only? We start getting into that business, I think it's a big fat loser.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Trump, he got a lot of, Trump got the Jews in the suburbs of Philly and the Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan to both vote for him. He flipped all those Hispanic counties, in the Rio Grande Valley. They were blue. That was the other blue wall that came down. It wasn't just Michigan and Wisconsin and so on. The blue wall down there. So look at the county by county map in California.
Well, and I think you're touching on something that I believe here firmly is we had the greatest coalition that ever existed, and Trump created that, and Charlie was a part of holding it all together as well. Yeah. And in his absence, and with the they've had the ability to take that coalition and start to fracture and divide it. And the algorithm, our foreign adversaries, our globalist enemies, the people whose interest is to collapse that, I think have been intentionally fanning the flames of the Jew hatred stuff, fanning the flames of the wild conspiracy things.
Sure.
And that's why I think that, Candace is doing so well. And they've also capitalized on everybody flooded to Charlie's videos as soon as he died. There's all of these people after his murder that became familiar with him very, very quickly, fell in love with him. And I had conversations with person after person who was marginally interested in politics or political philosophy at best, that all of a sudden became obsessed with him and or started to appreciate him. And then They had nowhere to go after that all died. And so now they get to go to Candace and listen to, her nonsense and all the people that are supporting that nonsense. And so I think it's going to disasters ahead for her.
Well, right. let me ask you this, because I haven't seen it, and you're involved with the organization, so I'll ask you a question. I mean, at some point, someone at Turning Point is going to have to issue a statement or come out and drop a Moab on, some of this nuttiness out there. It does not appear anyone's been chosen to do that. I doubt that Erica wants to do it. Would she be the most effective to shutting some of the stuff coming out of Candace up? Probably. But to just allow this, the termites slowly coming in, the Jew hunting termites are in the house, and some of this sort of racial supremacy conservatism stuff. I mean, somebody's going to have to say something. I mean, it seems to me that Trump and Vance, look, they understand that the coalition was a whole disparate group of people that may not want to have dinner together, but they all voted for Trump. Just like Charlie being gone, and just like when Reagan left. I mean, I've told people, enjoy this now. Enjoy it. Because, the Lord of the Flies is coming. Because, I don't know whether Vance can just casually transfer the same coalition to himself. Right? He might be able to.
If anybody can, I think he's the
the
best option.
He's more equipped to do it than George H.W. Bush was.
Correct.
Right? So it's possible.
Yeah. Well, to answer your question, I mean, Charlie was one of one, and there's nobody else there that can carry his gravitas and weight and in the nonsense. There's nobody there that I think could come out with a statement that would, calm this or, shut Candace up. You had his head of event security, Brian Harpool, who's a great guy I know personally and spent a good deal of time with and loved to death. And he is very credible, amazing guy. Was there, Charlie's, holding Charlie, cleaning his wound, checking for exit wound, all of this stuff. He went in very, very great detail about everything that happened that day. And all that coalition of crazies that Candace has put together, all of them did is continue to double down on the idea that he was in on it. He's lying. Look at him. He looks suspicious. Look at the way he's moving his hands. I mean, all of a sudden everybody's FBI profilers and everybody is there's no way that happened. There's this, there's that, the bullet. What are you talking about? All of a sudden everybody's hunting experts, everybody's ballistics experts, all of that. And he went, quite emotionally. I mean, it was hard for me to listen to, knowing him and, knowing Charlie and knowing all the people that were there. I mean, it was a rough thing to listen to. And for people who are interested, it was the Sean Ryan show that he went on. And it was a couple of hours, and it was hard to listen to, but worth it. But there's it does not matter. I think truly God himself could come down and give us all the truth, and Candace and her nut jobs would say that God's voice was fake coming from the clouds. I mean, that's how committed they are to these narratives.
So when the French Revolution happened, half of our founding fathers loved it. And the other half, Franklin, Washington, Adams, Hamilton, were very skeptical that what was going on there was similar to what we had just been through. The Jeffersonians loved it. Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, and others, they loved it. And if you look at what went on, after they were done chopping the heads off of the royal family, Marie Antoinette and Louis and the rest of the family that didn't escape, then they started to, look around and, say, well, who can we chop next? Eventually, Robespierre, who led the original mob, got his own head chopped off. our founders warned that perpetual revolution can be absolutely dangerous.
Yeah.
It gives you the Jacobins, it gives you the Bolsheviks, it gives you Mao, it gives you the Castro boys. It doesn't give you Abraham Lincoln. It doesn't give you Andrew Jackson or Teddy Roosevelt. Now, America has had the course correct. We fought a civil war. We've had presidents shot. But when you look at sort of what went on here with the 2024 election, there is a certain group of people that need the revolution to never die. It has to go on forever because they need a fresh supply of boogeymen. And who better than to pull out the old historical record and say, well, who was the number one boogeyman in history? Oh, I know. It's the Jews. From ancient Egypt to Candace Owens to Mamdani. So I guess the question is, if you wake up every day and you're a conservative thought leader or influencer, whatever the hell you are, somebody that, might want to play footsie with Hamas today, is what you're saying every day to your audience similar to what Mamdani and AOC and Ilhan Omar and my girlfriend Jasmine are saying? Is there some overlap there? And if there is, are you all right with it? Are you okay with that? And if you're listening to it and you're a fan and you're downloading some of this bile to your phone, maybe it's time for a reality check. Because, if there's no sunlight between you and this Ugandan-born Pakistani Islamist mayor-elect of New York, then you've got a problem.
Yeah, well, I think you could not be more correct there. So I've got one last question, and maybe you can answer this, maybe you cannot, because you're right there in the belly of the beast. In the cast of characters that Trump has put together, I would love to hear you rate a couple, and you can tell me the ones that you think are doing a fantastic job that come to mind. But I do want to know, who do you think is due to be replaced, or who do you think is been less than effective?
Well, I mean, there's no one here. Michael Jordan never lost a game 7 in the NBA Finals or in the playoffs. And Michael Jordan never lost a game 7 because Michael Jordan never played in a game 7. He got rid of his enemies by the time game 6 rolls around. So none of these people are going to be, getting rid of their problems by the time game 6 rolls around. With that said, there's pros and cons to everyone. I can't tell you who's I know what it looks like with some of these people. I can tell you that Bondi, Cash, and Bongino are dealing with the biggest internal career-rooted, tapeworm, belly of the beast, deep state problems at the DOJ. They've got the most middle management problems, without a doubt. So that's why you see some of the stuff you're seeing. And Miranda Devine writes this, and then Dan, and full disclosure, Dan's a client of mine and in the past, and Cash and I have the same publisher. There are some, they're fighting an internal struggle there.
Yeah, I don't think people understand how tough that is. People don't realize that it's it's like being a new CEO of a place, and you get plopped in and you have a tremendous number of people who are just passively, if not actively, resisting you, that you can't just shovel out. I mean, it's not, in the federal government, some of these entrenched bureaucrats, you don't even know who they are necessarily, and trying to figure out who they are is half the battle, and they're stymieing all of your efforts.
That's right. So, I mean, just for the audience, Dan and Cash and Pam, these are political appointees, but they oversee a workforce where some of these people might go back to the Carter administration.
Yep.
Okay. And you can't get rid of them. It's almost like they're tenured college professors teaching underwater lesbian basket weaving, right? So they're stuck there, and you got to try to root them out. And I've said to everyone, you can't just replace the top of these departments. You have to drop a Moab on them, and even then, you might still have to go in and with the scalpel and put some lasers on some people one at a time. But and that's the toughest. The DOJ and the FBI. That's the toughest part, and that's why you're seeing some of this stuff. The other thing too, obviously, the elephant in the room is the Epstein talk, and I just think that I've been over to DOJ before, and I think that too many people very simplistically think there's some magic list or some magic filing cabinet that Mulder and Scully are standing next to, and that if we could only get the skeleton key to get into that last room, and pull back the Venetian blinds and into the catacombs of that there's some silver bullet hiding down there to tell us everything. There just isn't. And if there was records of this stuff, then it was absolutely shredded by the Obama-Biden administrations.
Yeah.
Right. And then obviously, Pete is going to, Pete's got people in the Pentagon that probably had no business working at DOD or DOW now. So he's got entrenched people. In the old days, it used to be that all the left-wing kooks all worked at the State Department. And it's amazing that I don't see a bunch of headlines and craziness about Rubio. And Tammy Bruce, I used to produce Tammy Bruce's radio show, so I know Tammy. She's a spokesman. And it's just an amazing thing that Rubio doesn't get, some of the chum in the water that Pete and Bondi and others get. Which tells me something. I'm not sure that means, Rubio's, in on it and he's a shill. But, he's not totally trying to upset the total order of things, whereas Hegseth is trying to reset the Pentagon so it's no longer a petri dish for wokeism.
Yeah. No, I think he upset their apple cart in a big way. Just coming out and requiring fitness standards and, some of those sort of things. He hit a lot of people where it hurts, I love what he did. Even with, making people be clean shaven again. He's like, you want to grow a beard, go to SF, but otherwise, we're enforcing standards. A lot of that stuff is, man, it's coming in there with a chainsaw on things. Sure. And he doesn't have time, which is part of it. I think Rubio's been around for a long time and navigated through a long time and probably has a lot more internal friendships.
He was on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I think he was a chairman at one point.
Yeah.
So, he's not some novice, right? When he came to town, and some people dig him for this. He spent a lot of time when he came to town, when he was part of the Tea Party wave, hanging around John McCain and hanging around Lindsey Graham and Joe Lieberman. He was like the fourth wheel there for a while. And which is why, Rubio of 2016's presidential election sounds very different 10 years later here. But then again, so does Lindsey to some degree. But Lindsey still thinks we should be supplying number 2 pencils for the entire third world. But the reality is that, Trump has reset the board on foreign policy for sure. And that, look, not a lot of total disruption. I don't think Bessent is totally disrupting the Treasury Department, but RFK Jr. and Pete in particular, they're slaying a lot of sacred cows, a lot of slaughtering of sacred cows happening there. So, and each sacred cow has people benefiting from it, and had people that were filling the piggy bank from it and getting preferential treatment from it and patronage and all the rest of it. So yeah, I mean, they're the ones that are going to, and Bondi too, they're the ones that are going to get the most, nonsense thrown at them through the media and through leaks from the department itself.
Yeah, well, listen, brother, I always love having you on because I love the inside track. We both get to be in the know on certain things, and I treasure your insight and your humor. Where can people follow you, and plug your books, please?
Yes. So Publius PR, Publius National Post on Substack, PubliusPR.com, AJ Rice or Publius PR on pretty much every social media handle there is one or the other or both. Get the books from Amazon. We just dropped a paperback of the White Privilege album. You guys can have a White Privilege album Christmas. Obviously, The Woking Dead, that's volume 1. White Privilege album volume 2. And coming next year, volume 3, which is called The Curse of the Bearded Lady. So we're going to examine who that is. It's not your host here. He's obviously not the bearded lady. He's a bearded badass. But the reality is that, I do these things to try to bring irreverent humor to illustrate truth. So go to Amazon.com and you can get these two behind me and pre-order volume 3 because somebody's got to pay for this Bezos wedding that he had this year, right? We got to pay for that wedding. I mean, so, go pick yourself up a copy.
I love it. I love it. Well, hey, and I need to plug something right now really quick. I've gotten on with these my chronic silver guys, and it's cold season, and I was feeling a little bit of, something coming up in my my nose here, and been using the nasal spray, and it works. It doesn't allow the virus and everything to proliferate, and it works. So I throw that in my shower, and I'm happy I'm not suffering this morning like I was yesterday. So anyway, hey, thank you, brother. I appreciate you coming on. If you are going to go to my Chronic Silver website, it's code Bryce at checkout and you get a little discount. So, hey, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you. Let's do it again. To God be the glory. And we are out.
Bryce Eddy here. Many of you know me for encouraging self-reliance, knowing why you believe what you believe, and helping people prepare for the challenges of our time. But today I want to talk to you about protecting your household's future, starting with your finances. I believe that America is coming into a golden age of opportunity. Right now, gold has surged past $4,000 an ounce, a historic record. And the biggest names on Wall Street are predicting even more growth into 2025 and 2026, with price targets climbing as high as $6,000. And on top of that, we see global instability and nations working together to undermine America's influence, including information warfare, economic weaponry, political subversion, psychological operations, and social manipulation. That's why I've partnered with American Independence Gold. They're veteran-owned, and they give back, donating proceeds to Tunnel to Towers in honor of our first responders and heroes. And here's the opportunity for my listeners and supporters. You can receive up to $10,000 in free gold and silver credited to your account with qualifying purchases. That's real, physical gold and silver, tangible assets that can hold in your hands to defend your wealth. Don't wait until it's too late. Go to BryceEddyGold.com. That's BryceEddyGold.com or call 833-324-4653. Again, that's 833-324-GOLD. Take action today. Protect your family and strengthen your future, because freedom and security aren't handed to us. They're preserved by the choices we make. This is Bryce Eddy. Don't just prepare for tomorrow. Own a piece of it.